This year, two of my favorite game series released a remake of their respective first titles, if you count Xenoblade as separate from Xenogears and Xenosaga, that is. Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue Rescue Team on the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS were the first games to kick off the Pokémon Mystery Dungeon series, a spin-off series of Pokémon games well known for their much greater emphasis on storytelling and music quality to a degree the main series of games has not yet seen to this day, though Black and White's story was really good, I'll give you that. This series challenged the conventions of storytelling within the Pokémon brand of games, taking a much more serious tone in an otherwise mostly lighthearted brand, which I already have a standalone video on in the description below. While other Pokémon spin-off series have come and gone, Pokémon Mystery Dungeon has proven itself as a worthy series to continue publishing titles on to this day, with a total of 4 unique titles and now 1 remake. Xenoblade Chronicles was the first game developed by Monolith Soft under their new publisher of Nintendo, which released towards the end of the Wii's life cycle as one of the largest games ever created for the console. This is a game that exists with the purpose of telling a story, considering it is a roughly 70-hour JRPG with over 10 hours worth of cutscenes, so one playthrough will have you simply watching cutscenes for anywhere from 10 to 20% of your playtime. It brought a level of storytelling not common for the Nintendo brand, and I would argue challenges the conventions of storytelling itself through the ways the game subverts expectations and leads you on to believe it would follow the typical story format this type of plot would normally lead, only to have those ideas spun on their head. Both Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition released on the Switch in 2020, both bringing in a completely different art style than their originals, a remastered soundtrack, as well as altered and refined gameplay. This video series will not be on which of the two games are better, but rather comparing how each of them improved and made changes from their original releases. Which improved the most compared to their original release, brought the most new to the table, and created a far greater experience than their original release. Also, consider this my full review of each of these titles after having nearly 100%ed both. We will be getting into deep spoiler territory for both Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team and Xenoblade Chronicles in this discussion. Anything from Rescue Team DX and Xenoblade Definitive will be fair game, and I will also be discussing minor details from other Pokémon Mystery Dungeon games and from other Xenoblade Chronicles games. And there will be major spoilers for the Explorers series of Pokémon Mystery Dungeon games, as I will be drawing parallels to its plot. If you do not yet know the plots of Pokémon Mystery Dungeon 1 or 2, or of Xenoblade Chronicles, I would highly recommend checking it out before watching this series of videos, especially Pokémon Mystery Dungeon 2 and Xenoblade Chronicles, which are some of my favorite storylines ever. If you can't play them, I'd highly recommend at least checking out the cutscenes. I will link in the description abbreviated cutscene movies of PMD 1 and 2 I created a couple years ago, as well as whatever the first video of every Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition cutscene I can find is. You can also find my playthroughs of both the original and remasters of each of these games in the description. This was originally supposed to be one video, but then the script kinda wound up being over 50 pages long, and I already lost my mind when it took me 2 months to make a 3-hour video on why Breath of the Wild isn't a masterpiece. So instead, this will be a 3-part series of videos. In this episode, we'll be discussing both the plot and art style of Rescue Team DX and Xenoblade Definitive. In the next episode, we'll cover the remastered soundtrack of both games. And in the final episode, we'll be discussing the gameplay of both titles. I don't like it when YouTubers take too long in intros, and I think I just accidentally did that. So without any further ado, let's hop into Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX versus Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Pokémon Mystery Dungeon introduces a world made up completely of Pokémon, where the player is a human who has been transformed into a Pokémon and brought to this world, with no memory apart from their name. The game begins with a personality test to determine what Pokémon the player would be, followed by choosing which Pokémon will become your partner throughout this journey, before getting our storyline underway. Pokémon Mystery Dungeon games typically have this same opening premise across the series. Rescue Team has you wake up in this unfamiliar world and find an ally in your partner, who gives you a place to live and a friend as you learn about this world you found yourself in. This world is racked with natural calamities suddenly springing up in far greater numbers than normal. The two form a rescue team together to help others in need, all while uncovering the secrets of the past and your role in this world. Throughout the journey, a ghostly guide of Gardevoir sheds some light on various mysteries by appearing in the protagonist's dreams, with sometimes cryptic messages. One of the biggest lingering questions throughout this journey is whether the hero was turned into a Pokemon and brought to this world because of a role, or as a punishment. From the original release to the remastered version, there were no changes made to the plot. It's true to itself as purely the plot of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team. While leaving the story as is isn't necessarily a bad thing on paper, I do wish there had been some aspects changed to create a greater overall experience. For context, Rescue Team was the very first entry into the PMD series, and it attempted telling a serious tone not yet known for the Pokemon series up to this point. Those responsible for the plot were very aware of this, and took care not to step too far over the line for this entry into a new series. Because of this though, the plot becomes very lacking in several areas due to what feels to me like a lack of confidence in this new format for Pokemon. The reason why I say this is nearly every problem I have with the plot of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon 1 is all things that were fixed in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon 2. Rescue Team has you meet your partner out of nowhere, go on a rescue job, and then your partner gives you a spare house they apparently had kicking around and the game is like, alright, they're best friends now, take our word for it. Explorers, however, showcase the partner before you even meet them, showing how cowardly and unconfident in themselves they are, unable to even make it past the entry gate to enroll as an exploration team. After failing themselves, they come down to the beach to take in the view with all the bubbles over the water during the sunset. By doing this, Explorers establishes your partner's personality all before your character has even met them. It shows them as cowardly, unconfident to do anything on their own, while also showing this sensitive side to them, and after meeting them, also showcases how much of a dreamer they are. After meeting, their relic fragment, a lucky charm of sorts, is stolen, and it's with your help that they muster the courage to get it back. It is also with your help that they finally have the courage to make it past the entry gate into the guild, with you joining them as you have nowhere else to go in this unfamiliar new world. Explorer showcases who your partner truly is before you even begin your journey together, and gives them a reason to rely on you by having you as the player be the inspiration and courage that they're able to draw out in themselves. Rescue Team does not do any of this. You meet them, know nothing about them, they have no reason to need you, they give you a house, and now you're partners. The Mystery Dungeon series in general seems to have learned from the mistake of Rescue Team's method of establishing the partner, such as Pokémon Super Mystery Dungeon, where your partner isn't even the first person you meet. Instead, you get to know your partner as neighbors, begin walking to and from school together as you are both outcasts, and your relationship goes through some serious ups and downs before you even set out on your journey. It's honestly fascinating. Rescue Team also lacks in character development for the partner. There are some heart-to-heart moments, such as when you're being hunted down and they assure you that they will stay by your side no matter what, but this didn't really develop from anything. They've just kind of always been with you on this journey with no real reason to honestly even like you. Explorers has them rely on you, and have them progress from a coward who can't seem to do some of the simplest things, to progressing to being able to tackle impossible odds and situations that have the potential to cause death if your plans are even slightly off, because it's through you that they begin to draw out their courage. You help them progress to becoming a more confident self, believing in themselves, until the day comes that they don't need to live relying on you by their side and are now armed with the strength to live life on their own. There's serious character development here, which Rescue Team severely lacks. Another plot point I want to bring up is the third-party member of each game. In Rescue Team, during the phase of the story where the two heroes are being hunted down, before they are about to be stricken down by Articuno, they are saved by a Pokemon named Absol. Absol comes in as this complete badass, saving your lives and joining your cause to uncover the truth behind the calamities of the world. And that's it. That's literally it for Absol. He gets about one line of dialogue when entering Pokemon Square, but apart from that, he never really says anything again. Heck, if you even take him into the final boss, the heroes refer to them as their friend in the aftermath. Is our friend okay? Your friend is fine. Absol had so much potential to become a great Tritagonist character. Instead, he gets zero backstory, zero progression, zero lines of dialogue past meeting him except for that one in the square, zero importance. From a plot standpoint, after he saves you, he's basically just gone forever. He's never acknowledged again. Again, something explorers learn from the mistake of. I gave a spoiler warning before, but I'll do it again. Go experience the story of this game because it's legendary, and we're about to spoil some of the most important stuff. The tritagonist of Explorers is Grovyle, a thief from the future who initially drives the plot forward as the evil mastermind behind stealing the time gears, controlling time in their region, and slowly stopping time itself. It is only after being arrested and brought back to the future by Dusknoir that it's revealed that Grovyle was collecting the time gears to bring to Temporal Tower to prevent its collapse and save time from going into the broken state it is in his world of the future. This future with time being dysfunctional is a post-apocalyptic world where even those who would typically stick to themselves instead exploit others merely to survive in this world. Grovyle came to the past to sacrifice his life and the lives of everyone else from the future, along with his human partner, in order to change history for a better future. After an accident traveling through time, however, the two were separated, with the human transforming into a Pokémon, gaining amnesia, and starting your journey. You now have your partner from this journey you've been on, and your old partner from a life your character no longer remembers, both of which very much care about you. Eventually, he sacrifices himself to go back to the future with one of the main antagonists, Dusknoir, leaving the rest up to you and your partner. While your partner has been the one by your side throughout all of the journey the protagonist remembers, Grovyle still sees himself as the protagonist's partner. This is the scene where Grovyle fully passes the torch to the partner, them now being the only ones to support the protagonist. The journey with Grovyle has him come to accept that he's no longer the protagonist's best friend, that there is somebody new in their lives, and that that's alright. Explorers learned from the mistakes of Rescue Team, and went above and beyond in writing a tritagonist character who not only has development, but is one of the most imperative characters in the plot being told. A stark contrast to Absol, whose only purpose in the entire game is to save you once in the plot, and then be a good unit to have as a third party member during gameplay. My whole point in comparing Rescue Team to Explorers is to express that the sloppiness of the plot of Rescue Team was learned from in future titles, with even the game immediately after it fixing countless points on its own. Don't get me wrong, I do adore the plot of Rescue Team. It was my first Pokémon game I ever played. It was my first DS game I ever played. The ending made me cry as a kid, and it will always have a special place in my heart. But I'm not a kid anymore, and it's nowadays as an adult, especially after playing the remake, that I can't help but notice how many imperfections are riddled throughout the plot of this game. There's nothing necessarily wrong with leaving the plot as is true to the original, but the writers behind the Mystery Dungeon games clearly learned from the mistakes of Rescue Team, taking drastically different measures even in the title immediately after Rescue Team. It would have been incredible to see this level of refinement applied to the plot of Rescue Team, to explore some development in the partner, to develop a believable relationship, or to create a third party member who has their own arc and importance to the story being told. Changes like this could have the potential to change the plot of Rescue Team from a pretty good plot to an outright fantastic plot. Playing through this remake with the unchanged original plot does evoke nostalgia in me, sure, but I can't help but notice everything that just doesn't add up for me. I personally would have preferred if changes had been done to this plot with consideration to the lessons learned and presented earlier in this series of games. It's not like the entire storyline would have to change, really just the way the partner and Absol are written would make me so much happier. This story does also have some pacing issues, though changes to those from the original would have a much more drastic outcome of the plot of Rescue Team, so I suppose that was probably better left as is to the original if the aim was to have a near identical plotline. There's nothing inherently wrong with leaving the story as is for a remaster, but this is a case where those behind these games were clearly aware of their mistakes as expressed through entries such as Explorers, but they couldn't be bothered to go into Rescue Team with this fresh new perspective and experience. Xenoblade Chronicles is a world built on two titans who seemingly killed one another long ago, with organic life coming from Bionis and mechanical life coming from Akonis. The two sides are at war as the people of Bionis fight for survival against their mechanical invaders. While the Mechon are not impossible to beat without it, the only weapon which can consistently shred through their armor is the Monado, said to be the sword of the Bionis which lay waste to Mechonis long ago. The only one who has control over wielding it is Dunban, though the sword does take a toll on his body, eventually taking away almost all use of his right arm. Dunban and his allies are able to push back the Mechon and secure peace for a time. During this time, our protagonist, Shulk, is in charge of research on the Monado, uncovering its secrets and unveiling the hidden power behind the sword. The Mechon do, however, return and attack his home, Colony 9, killing whoever they can. Shulk, along with his two best friends Orion and Fiora, battle the Mechon invaders, along with Dunban wielding the Monado with his remaining functional arm. The toll is too much on his body, however, and Shulk takes over use of the sword, leading to the discovery that he can see visions of the future with the sword and take action to change the passage of fate. In the attack, we meet Metalface, the initial main antagonist of the game. The Monado is not able to damage Metalface or other faced Mechon later in the journey, with some exceptions of when Shulk's willpower is strong enough. Powerless to prevent it, Metalface is able to land the killing blow on the person most important to Shulk, Fiora, before soon after being recalled to Mechonis. This incites Shulk to set out on a journey of revenge, to destroy all the Mechon, avenge Fiora, and to kill Metalface. The plot of this remaster, just like Rescue Team DX, is left unchanged compared to the original. Comparing the way cutscenes and story is expressed by Rescue Team and Xenoblade isn't exactly a fair comparison, considering Rescue Team hopped from Game Boy Advance and DS to the Switch, 2D into 3D, brought back to life from the ground up. Xenoblade Chronicles, on the other hand, just has more of a fresh coat of paint when it comes to its cutscenes. Instead of creating something completely new for these scenes, it's clear it's just the originals with new models and textures and such. As such, the original voice acting from the Wii version was used again, completely unchanged story, just like Rescue Team DX. Also like Rescue Team DX, this has a few problems for me. The biggest being that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 brought more lore to the table in terms of the worlds of Xenoblade Chronicles. Xenoblade Chronicles says that this world was created due to mere curiosity. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, however, retconned this and brought so much more to the table, telling that this world was created because the scientists behind using the conduit to recreate the world had lost faith in humanity after how they've desecrated the planet and waged war with one another over the perpetual motion machine that is the conduit. This served to create greater understandable motivations behind Klaus, as well as better express the reasons why he feels and acts the way he does within Xenoblade Chronicles as Zanza. I thought for sure going into this remake that this would be a version of Xenoblade Chronicles that would account for the slightly altered story that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 brought to the table, having them seemingly become the ultimate pair of games to go hand in hand with their stories in this way. The developers even took the time to change the character design of Alvis to create further canonical connections of Alvis as a third Aegis from the world of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and also confirmed my theory way before this game was even revealed that Alvis's key was actually a core crystal. This attention to detail on the connections between these games had me think that this game would account for what Xenoblade Chronicles 2 brought to the table, not just through one character design change, but also through its plot, or at least in the final cutscene of the game where the creation of this world is revealed. All that would really need to change is that cutscene to account for what Xenoblade Chronicles 2 added to the table, and now that Xenoblade 2 exists, it could have had some interesting tidbits like mentioning the world of that game. I am definitely disappointed that this remaster was not used as the one opportunity to tell the story of Xenoblade Chronicles in such a way that it accounts for what Xenoblade Chronicles 2 added to the table. Though the original plot was not changed, this remaster adds an additional epilogue story after the events of the game, known as Future Connected. My exact memory on it might be a bit fuzzy because I beat this epilogue in one sitting for 8 hours on release day. This epilogue explores the Bionis shoulder area, which was meant to be in the original game but wound up being cut before release. If you hack the original Xenoblade Chronicles, you can still access the Bionis shoulder, which is mostly functional. It makes me really wonder why this was cut off from the original game. It was most likely intended to be the section used in between Magna Forest and Aerith Sea in the original game, considering that the Bionis shoulder exists between those points, and the party instead just winds up taking a magic bubble thing from Magna Forest straight to Aerith Sea. It feels to me like this bubble excuse was thrown together after the original Way Up, the Bionis shoulder, was cut from the game. We'll never know what story the Bionis shoulder was supposed to tell back when the game first released, but through Future Connected, we're at least able to see this area cut from the original game, brought back to life and given the love and attention it deserves. This is one of the largest areas in Xenoblade Chronicles, rivaling Gower Plains. Maybe they just didn't want two insanely massive plains in the original or something. It's honestly so much fun exploring this area alongside watching a video of the area being explored in the original by hackers, and seeing just how much was changed from the original, and how much was given proper life. Future Connected serves as a plot to wrap up Melia's character, the Hyantia party member from the main game. When I saw the trailers for this and the Strange Portal, I thought this would for sure connect to Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and the Conduit in some way. However, it really didn't seem to contribute to Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 lore in this way, which left me a bit disappointed, and the lore of Future Connected left me with more questions than answers. Upon reading the passages in my collector's edition art book because I'm a turbo nerd, I would have bought the Rescue Team DX one too if it existed, I found out that apparently the lore added by Future Connected has connections to the future of Xenoblade Chronicles itself. Perhaps we can expect this line of lore to be continued by Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I'm already hyped thinking about it. This plot features party members of Shulk, Melia, and new additions of Kino and Nene, being two of the children of one of the party members of the main game, Ricky. Remember how I said the main game changed about nothing though? There are cutscenes in the main game where we see some of Ricky's children. Literally not a single one of them is green to match Kino's colors. A couple of them are pink, meaning they could be Nene, but not a single one is green. Come on, devs, you really should have just taken one of the yellow ones and made him green. Then anybody playing the main game after seeing the story of Future Connected can be like, hey, that's Kino. But no, couldn't be bothered to do a simple palette swap. It bugs me probably more than it should. Future Connected serves to wrap up the story of the Hyantia, wrap up Melia, as well as one of the most easily missed characters for new players of the main game, Tyrea. At least, that's how I find her. I forgot she existed on my first playthrough, honestly, though nowadays I've played through the main game of Xenoblade Chronicles about 5 times. While Rescue Team DX didn't bring anything new to the table in terms of storytelling, Xenoblade Chronicles did the exact same thing for its main game, but also took the time to restore a discarded project of an area from the original game, and use it to tell an epilogue that wraps up Melia's story, while also contributing new lore that will apparently come to play in future titles. Rescue Team DX and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. In my opinion, you two should have both had some changes to the main story you tell. At least a change in dialogue of 2 characters for Rescue Team DX, and a change in the final cutscene of Xenoblade Chronicles. And make one of them up on green, because that really bugs me. Rescue Team was my first ever Pokemon game, and its story will always be special to me, and it definitely evoked nostalgia in me playing the remake. It was a joy to experience, even if I notice more imperfections nowadays than I did as a kid. Xenoblade Chronicles restored the vision of one of the biggest areas of the original game before it was cut, and used it to wrap up Melia's story. Rescue Team and Xenoblade. Both of you are fascinating stories, but I do wish both of you had applied the lessons you'd clearly learned from later titles in your series to revisit these opening titles with this fresh new perspective. Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue Rescue Team were released on the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS, and because of that, they were in 2D. The DS was capable of 3D graphics, not exactly the best ones though, so some series like Pokémon played it safe and stuck to 2D. In the case of Rescue Team, however, it was the first entry in the Pokémon series to release a set of games on 2 different consoles. The Game Boy Advance could only display 2D graphics, however, so just like the main series of games, these entries stuck to 2D graphics until the 3DS. This engine and style of graphics were then later used in the Explorer series of games, which released exclusively on the Nintendo DS. Rescue Team DX is a large generation gap, and a big change from 2D to 3D. While an art style such as that presented in the 3DS Mystery Dungeon games could have been used, instead, a completely new way to express the world of Mystery Dungeon was used. This entire world now looks like a drawing, with attention to detail such as an outline around the models and dashed lines under the shadows. The background details all seem to blend together, as if the characters all exist on top of this one image, and not garbage images like the cutscenes of Fire Emblem Three Houses where you can literally see the lines where the textures don't properly match up.
Whoa, nice graphics! I'd like to get my hands on that game!
Don't get me wrong, I love Fire Emblem Three Houses. I just hate the backgrounds during those cutscenes though. Instead of a weird mess where the characters just do not fit with the backgrounds, these characters appear to pop out, as if you're experiencing the story by opening up a pop-up book. In my opinion, in terms of art style, this is honestly one of the most charming game worlds I have ever seen. Throughout my entire playthrough of Rescue Team DX, I could never get over how beautiful the skies were, the water, the buildings, the cutscenes. The way the characters will have a texture that remains stationary as their model moves just speaks to that drawing art style, as if an artist drew in layers and is moving the outline of their drawing around and revealing different parts of this layer of textures. With the 2D graphics of the original, there was only so much that could be done in these various cutscenes. In the remake, these cutscenes go way above and beyond. Bosses actually feel menacing. Things actually happen during conflict. And this world finally feels alive. This is a completely new way of expressing the world of Pokémon Mystery Dungeon in what I would argue is its most charming form yet. In terms of Rescue Team DX's graphical improvements and new artistic style, I honestly think it's absolutely fantastic. As well, I was originally planning on including this in the gameplay discussion, but it works in art as well. Every friend area now has its own custom art for the area. In the original, these were areas you could visit to tell your allies to join your party or give them gummies or whatever. I know a lot of people were disappointed now that it's menus instead of actual areas to visit, but this helps you be so much more efficient than in the original. You no longer need to go to that area and look around until you actually find who you're looking for. Now you can find them on your list, click them, and have a menu showing all the Pokemon of that area, all while having a different theme for each area just like the original. Even if each area isn't actually explorable, there is a unique illustration for each area, with even the option to turn off the UI just to admire the art in front of you, or consider using it in thumbnails in my case. All these illustrations are awesome, and I feel like capture the charm and essence of having a real area like in the original, without the built-in hassle of tracking down what ally you're looking for. Overall, the art style of Rescue Team DX makes it one of the most charming games I have played to date. Xenoblade Chronicles is a series that has had a very interesting progression in terms of its artistic style. Xenoblade Chronicles had a semi-realistic art style with some hints of anime here and there. Xenoblade Chronicles X had a realistic art style, along with anime eyes. And finally, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 went full on with the anime art style. It's as if they always wanted to embrace the anime art style, but were really hesitant about it or something, and slowly worked up towards it. It's like during Xenoblade 1 and X they were like, heh, nobody could possibly suspect we secretly want to do a super anime art style. When I saw the first trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, honestly, I hated the art style, though to be fair the graphics were greatly improved before release. I thought I'd go into this game despising the character models. I still played it because I still expected great things from the story and music, both of which way surpassed my expectations, and I must say, as it went on, the art style sure did grow on me. Like at first, I really disliked the eyes, how big they were and how wonky they seemed to me, but then that became one of my favorite parts of the models. The expressiveness across their faces and especially eyes during these cutscenes was absolutely incredible. It was so easy to understand just how these characters felt just by looking at their eyes. I think to this day, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has my favorite cutscenes out of any game, and the expressiveness of each of these characters just did wonders towards making these cutscenes as great as I'd argue they were. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 also introduced a bit of a sneak peek at what Xenoblade Chronicles 1 may look like in this art style, by adding the characters of Shulk and Fior in this new style. I remember when playing this DLC challenge mode, I thought it sure would be incredible to see Xenoblade Chronicles 1 completely in this art style. Yeah, if they completely remastered Xenoblade Chronicles 1 to look like this, that would actually be really cool. I really like the characters looking like this. Little did I know, that was exactly what was planned. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition retells the original Xenoblade Chronicles adventure with this new art style that was slowly worked towards across the 3 games leading up to this point. While the cutscenes themselves are completely recycled as opposed to Rescue Team DX where they needed to be built from the ground up again due to the major jump in hardware for that remake, these new models give all the characters a newfound charm. They finally stand out from the world around them, instead of blending together with their environments. Every one of these characters has a new charm to them, getting a new design in this style that really makes them stand out. The best one, I would argue, in terms of improvement was Melia, who went from this to this. The worst one I feel like is Ryan. I love everybody else's new models, but there's something about Ryan's that just seems a little off to me. Maybe it's the eyes, but it's still overall pretty good. The only character who did not get much of a redesign was Ricky, because he's already obviously perfect.
So fucking adorable!
These models breathe a new life into this world, and have you understand the characters so much better during the cutscenes through the expressiveness of their eyes, just like Xenoblade Chronicles 2. This emotion on their faces did exist in the original game, but all the details just blended together. In the remaster, each little detail of their expression stands out on its own and contributes towards expressing to the player exactly how these characters are feeling. The environments from afar look absolutely stunning, and with the addition to this version of the game being able to zoom in the camera all the way into first person, I need this game to become available in VR. I noticed so many details about the world in this playthrough that I had never noticed on the Wii or 3DS versions. From afar, this world is even more stunning than the original, no longer dealing with the blur that came with the Wii's graphics. That's from afar at least. Up close is a different story. Many of the textures still look like they're straight out of a Wii game, and seeing some of the walls up close in some of the cutscenes just makes me go, ew, what?
Whoa, nice graphics. I'd like to get my hands on that game.
Many environment models are clearly unchanged as well. Like, you'll be able to go up to any natural wall or large tree and whatnot, and still be able to count how many straight lines make up its circumference. It has this blocky feel that makes it feel like the models were from a Wii game, because that's exactly what they were unchanged since. Or you can go observe the water of this world, which is absolutely gorgeous, but the moment you go to the shoreline and look close enough, you'll notice the shoreline is made up of many straight lines. They took the time to make the water so pretty, but couldn't be bothered to do anything about the shoreline. It's not like I inspected every shoreline, but the only exception I could find to this was Aerith Sea, with water and a shoreline that behaves as it should. The reason for this is because this is exactly how it was in the original. I never even realized this difference between Aerith Sea and the other bodies of water in the original until I played the remake. There are certainly some environments that have been given fantastic new life, such as Galahad Fortress, where instead of just being some walls essentially, now has various lights that come on and make the fortress actually feel alive and lived in, as opposed to just some structure. Or the high Entia related areas now seem to pop so much more than they did in the original, where the environment seemingly blended together. There is so much that's absolutely fantastic about this remastered world, but to anyone who's played the original, it becomes evident that only certain bits and pieces were changed, and some things that should have been changed but didn't become glaringly obvious. Also, hold on, before we leave the freaking village, we just saw a whole bunch of cutscenes at once, and earlier there was the one cutscene where it showed Dixon like lurking behind one of these things, like the party members are over here, I think he was lurking behind this. When it did it, no, it wasn't this looks good. Because he was like behind some box or something, and when it zoomed in on Dixon and that box, or whatever it wasn't this. Like, you could tell that it was Wii textures. Also, there was the cutscene of Dixon and Shulk talking, and the music was way louder than both of them, which is, you know, not okay. And then there was also the, cutscene before that, where they were talking to Mikal in Junks there, and the seagulls just wouldn't shut up. Like, it was a little bit hard for me to focus on the scene. So to wrap things up, both Rescue Team DX and Xenoblade Definitive stuck to their original plots one for one. It would have been great to see the lessons learned from storytelling later in the Mystery Dungeon series applied to the plot of Rescue Team to refine it and turn a great plot into an absolutely fantastic plot. It would have been great to see Xenoblade Definitive account for the story retcons introduced by Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but instead we only got one character design change and no changes to the final cutscene to account for these retcons, which I would argue, had it been implemented, would have made Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 the perfect pair of games. For art style, I absolutely adore what Rescue Team DX brought to the table. I think throughout this entire 3-part video series for the 4 aspects of story, art style, music, and gameplay for both Rescue Team DX and Xenoblade Definitive, I think Rescue Team DX's art style is literally the only avenue where I have zero complaints. For Xenoblade Definitive's new art style, I would argue this finally gives the characters the charm and life they deserve. Instead of everything blending together, now everything stands out, and the main details such as the facial expressions are better than ever and perfectly express how that character is feeling. From afar, this world looks absolutely breathtaking. From up close, however, there are definitely times it still looks like a Wii game with some of the environment models or textures. I mean, it's still leagues better than Pokémon trees. And that about wraps up the first part of this 3-part series. Next episode, we'll be discussing the remastered music of Rescue Team DX and Xenoblade Definitive, and then finally, we'll be wrapping up with the gameplay of both in the episode after that. You can find the next episodes on screen momentarily, or in the description below, in addition to all my other discussion videos, and my full playthroughs of Blue Rescue Team, Rescue Team DX, Xenoblade Chronicles, and Xenoblade Definitive. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you asked me about my gameplay experience of, say, Xenoblade Chronicles, I could mention the gameplay systems, how they worked and how I liked them and whatnot. But if I needed to talk about specifics of my own gameplay, my memories about what happened while I played, I couldn't pull up a single specific memory or event that happened during my own gameplay. It's not something that gets carried along. If you ask me about the story, however, I could write you a full essay on the spot along with quotes and all without needing to look back at the source material about how Shulk's character develops throughout the story, how his goals shift from single-minded revenge to seeking out peace to something even further beyond that. I could talk about his hatred, his doubts in himself, the times he falters, the times he stays determined, his views on his allies, the development of his willingness to see himself in others, and so much more.